reduced environmental footprint.
Question number 9, the Honourable David Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Finance. What written reports did he receive from the Treasury during the 5 months after his appointment as Minister of Finance in late 2008, describing the increases in deposits in finance companies after they entered the Crown Guarantee Scheme, as referred to at paragraph 6.2 and 6.5 of the Auditor General's Performance Audit Report on the Treasury's handling of the Crown Retail Deposit Guarantee Scheme? And what did those reports tell him, if anything, about how much the Crown's exposure to those finance companies had increased?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr. Speaker, before I address the details of that question, I just want to remind the member that the point of the Deposit Guarantee Scheme, which was set up by the previous government in 2008, was to protect depositors in extraordinary financial times. And administration of the scheme was delegated to the Secretary of the Treasury. The risk that finance company deposits would increase was recognised by the previous government when it set up the scheme. Indeed, allowing the institutions to continue lending was one of the scheme's main aims. In terms of the member's question, I received no written Treasury reports specifically about the increase in deposits, although I discussed the management of risks associated with the scheme regularly and intensively with the Treasury.
The Honourable David Parker.
In the light of the fact that he received no reports during that period to that effect, is he aware that the Auditor General's report says, and I quote, "It took 5 months for the Treasury to begin monitoring," end quote, and that South Canterbury's finance deposit base increased by 25% in the first 4 months and increased its loan, including many new loans capitalising interest, in other words, Ponzi schemes, and second mortgages, all of which increased the risk profile under the guarantee?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr. Speaker, I didn't say I received no reports. I said I received no written reports, but the matters were discussed extensively. As the Auditor General has already pointed out, in the early stages of the scheme, Treasury did not have immediately in place the kind of arrangements you would expect for the management of such a large liability. But it can also remind the member, in early 2009, now 3 years ago, South Canterbury Finance was regarded as a large, strong, sound finance company. But in hindsight, it now appears their bad lending practices meant that regardless of the guarantee, they were going to fail because of the impact of the global financial crisis.
The Honourable David Parker.
Has he heard that the Treasury's main excuse for not monitoring finance companies or advising the Minister, and I'm not blaming the Minister here, as advised by the Auditor General to the Finance and Expenditure Committee yesterday, was that Treasury do not like to intervene in finance markets? And does he agree with the Auditor General that doesn't withstand scrutiny because the Crown had already intervened through the grant of the guarantee and should have been guarding against that risk growing unwisely?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr. Speaker, yes, I have heard that, but we need to bear in mind that the Deposit Guarantee Scheme as set up by the previous government was correctly focused on protecting the depositors. It was not intended as a means of running the companies. And as I said to the member earlier, South Canterbury Finance was regarded as a big, strong, successful, soundly run finance company. It actually took most of 2009 for anyone to get enough information about their activities to understand that it was likely to struggle to survive, and matters went on for another 6 or 8 months, with every effort being made to protect the taxpayer by supporting South Canterbury to trade through. As it happened, they couldn't.
The Honourable David Parker.
Will he support the Treasury appearing before the Finance and Expenditure Committee to answer questions about the Auditor General's criticism of Treasury's monitoring and failures to advise you as Minister, which may have caused $100 million or more extra and avoidable cost to taxpayers?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr. Speaker, well, that's a matter for the Select Committee, and it's not within the Minister's purview. However, I would ask the member to consider this issue, that while some people say that there should have been more intervention, No one has actually said what that intervention should have been, short of becoming deemed directors of the company and therefore essentially taking over the running of it. And that, as I understand it, was never the intention even of the previous Labor government when it set up the guarantee.
Point of order, the Honourable David
My
Parker.
question wasn't whether he believed finance and expenditure should have Treasury in front of them. That is for finance and expenditure. My question was whether he would support the Treasury appearing in front of finance expenditure to answer the Auditor General's
That was indeed the question, and if the Minister was prepared to, it would be helpful if the Minister were to answer that, because that was the absolute thrust of the question, whether the Minister would support the Treasury appearing in front of the Select Committee. The Minister made it clear he thought it was the Select Committee's responsibility, but the question asked an opinion whether the Minister would support it, and some attempt to answer that would be helpful. The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, I don't take a view about that. It's hypothetical. The committee will make up its own mind whether it wants to get Treasury in. All public agencies know they're open to parliamentary scrutiny.
I thank the Minister. Question number 10, Kevin Haig.